Okay,
Sure.
3, 2, 1. Welcome everyone to the Interstice podcast. We have a awesome guest on today. I'm humbled to behold in our presence Andrew Szeto. Am I saying it correctly?
Szeto, but yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, it's pretty
Szeto?
good. Yeah,
Okay, Andrew Szeto. I wasn't sure because I saw the S. I was like, does the S take precedence? I'm not sure.
yeah. It catches
uh,
everyone.
So basically, Andrew, by way of an introduction for people listening, Andrew is a would I say carpenter? Would that be the professional
Um,
designation or
I don't know if I call it a professional designation. I just like to say that I make stuff. Is
okay,
usually
okay,
it, and yeah, with recycled skateboards. But yeah, you could say carpenter and stuff.
right on. Okay, so yeah, making cool stuff like and with this interesting angle of like the recycled skateboards is really cool. I want to jump into so many questions regarding that, but I gotta give myself this get into this. But also skateboarder as well. That seems to be like a big part of your culture. Like when I was going through some of the content that you were creating. Right
Yeah,
on.
totally.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Right on. So to jump right into it, I thought like a cool place to start would actually be just kind of like the beginning of your skateboarding. Like what years did you start and how did that come about and what was that
Right.
like for you growing up?
Right. So I mean, so like, I'm talking to you now from Canada and stuff. Our family moved over to California during my first year of high school, or like, just prior to my first year of high school. Big tech boom, and my mom got a job as a software developer over there. And
Mm-hmm.
so we moved with her, and skateboarding wasn't really a big thing at all in Canada, or at least like my part. I didn't really see it around too much. And then when you kind of get to California, you just kind of roll past this like parking lot at a skate shop, and there were just like 50 kids out skateboarding all at the same time. And I was just like, what is that? I don't know what that is, but I kind of want to be a part of it.
Mm,
So, I always played baseball growing up and a bit of hockey.
mm.
And when I saw that, I was just like, I need to know what that's all about and try it out. And yeah, I pretty much did and pretty much took over.
So what do you like what was that year when you first saw it? I was curious like what age you started at kind of thing. When was that?
What's the first year of high school? It's like, what's like grade nine and stuff?
Okay, so yeah, first year of high school, then it would probably be somewhere around
14.
like 14, 15 kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. About that. Yeah.
Okay, very
Pretty late.
cool.
I was probably a little later than most folks, but yeah, it was took on for sure.
Right on. And so like how is the culture around those skate parks? Like is everybody welcoming? Are you all improving together? Did those people kind of become your friends at that time?
Well, in California, it's like it's been culture there for a lot longer than it was like say here in Canada and
Mhm.
stuff. I mean now it's all about the same, frankly, with the internet. Like, everyone's kind of on a level playing field, I want to say. But the culture was, you gotta kind of come in and you gotta it's not it's welcoming to a certain degree, but like, I think a lot of it is kind of you can't really just like stand around and bullshit your way through like skateboarding. It's like every trick is just like it's increasingly tough, and people
Mhm.
want to see that you're trying and kind of putting your best foot forward to a certain degree and just like trying tricks and stuff. You can't, yeah, you kind of have to like, really put in work and stuff. So that was kind of like a big thing, so a lot of folks, you hear the term like back in the day, poser and stuff. I think these days it's like, I think it's certainly much more open and stuff. But back then it was, you kind of were looked down upon if you weren't really progressing and weren't really trying things, I suppose. And so yeah, it was a bit tough to break in. Certainly, like my first year, I didn't really have very many friends, and but I made it a thing to get better and try and break into the scene a bit. And yeah, I mean, I had a bunch of good friends that I made over time for sure.
Was it a gradual thing or did you find was there a moment where you landed a trick and you had like won the approval of the tribe, like that kind of cool movie moment?
I think, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's a gradual thing. Like, certainly tricks do help, but like, I think it's more than anything. It's just like people want to help somebody on the side of the road if they see themselves actively like pushing the car or trying, right?
Okay, yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's one of those things where I think like, if you show that you're putting in the work, you're being respectful, and and you know you're actively trying, then folks I think are more willing to befriend you, and you know, just think that, you know, I don't know, I just think that a person like that has better, like, decent character, and it's worth defending and stuff, right? So
Yeah, I get that's a cool angle, I guess, to come at it from. It's less the specific that you even reach the skill. It's but that you see clear effort, that
yeah.
you know that that person is genuinely invested in it, be it that they're a fast learner, slow learner, whatever else.
And that's it. Yeah, I think, like, you know, certainly these days it's completely open, and I think it's completely welcoming, and I mean, you know, you stick around if you want to stick around to learn, right? So
Yeah. What do you think of the like when, because that's still significant time to have started when you're 15, and now, you know, how so many years later, obviously it's not only something that you've continued, but now you've kind of like integrated it into your art. Like, what do you think, not even necessarily by comparison, but like what do you think of the current state of the skateboarding community?
the current state of the skateboarding community is pretty good. I mean, I want to say that, you know, much like most sports and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, I think it was very gender biased and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Certainly when I started, and, you know, you would have your slang terms, you'd have your derogatory slang terms that were kind of being thrown around and stuff. And I think these days, honestly, like, you know, there have been a couple major documentaries that, like, bands put out on, you know, sort of the LGBTQ two plus community joining skateboarding, and I think it's evolved, certainly, you know, much like most of culture has, and it's much more accepting. And I mean, you see it at the parks, you know, it's just like everyone's welcome, and you know, so to kind of speak to the stuff I was speaking to before and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know, certainly everyone is allowed at the park. Not that they weren't before, but, like, you know, it's just much more welcoming. I
I
certainly
see.
welcome everyone with open arms, and I want to say that it's a pretty great community environment for sure.
That's cool. I wonder about, I mean, something I feel like is true of almost every single thing that has a learning curve on it now, just like
Mhm.
due to the nature of the internet. I feel like not, it's awesome to hear, you know, like it's inclusive. You got anybody who wants to skateboard. I'd
Yeah,
imagine people probably improve now at an insane rate because of the access to educational tool. Like, you know, there, I can only imagine, I haven't even looked at skateboarding
yeah,
channels, but I watch like snowboarding channels, and the education that's put out
yeah.
there, like the kids must just improve, like,
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine, like, you know, so I, you know, back then I had maybe had aspirations to be a pro skateboarder and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if that were, I were to have been able to accomplish that or something, not that I was anywhere close, but if I were to have been able to, it's just like, man, I think you just get trumped by all these kids who are just absolutely insane. And every day I feel like there's some new kid that's just like, wow, that kid's mind blowing. Wow, that kid's mind blowing. Well, I haven't seen this kid in a year, but he's still mind blowing, or she's still mind blowing, you know? And it's just like, yeah, the levels are certainly insane. And yeah, I mean, barring injury, barring anything that can happen to you, it's pretty insane for sure. And I want to say that that's certainly much more than skateboarding. I think it's the whole world and everything that we're doing.
Right.
I've been woodworking for like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think if you were to ask an old time carpenter, you know, how good would a person be in 5 years of work, you know, they'd be like, oh, they're okay and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like exactly with the internet, I'm just like, I can probably approach any project and be somewhat comfortable in doing it with with a quick visual and stuff, you know, of how it's done, and a basic understanding of how most tools work, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
want to say that, you know, it's not just skateboarding. Certainly, like, my woodworking has progressed big time, just watching things for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh man,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so cool. I mean, I find that, of course, true for, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without the internet, because all
Yeah.
of the editing that I've learned has been from YouTube videos. Like it's a
Exactly.
necessity for me to be able to do anything. It's just
Yep.
it's really really wonderful. So I'm curious. Yeah, that seems like a natural segue. I mean, I could have better introduced at the beginning, like some of, you've built like an A-frame house. I saw projects where you do like canoe paddles. You were doing
Yeah.
like cool climbing like grips. I'm not sure if
Kind of,
that's the
yeah.
technical term that you call them, but like all sorts of
Collectible.
projects. What are they
Yeah.
called? Holds or
Yeah. Climbing holds.
climbing holds? So
Yeah.
just it seems that there isn't a particular type of construction that you're specifically interested in, but where did you first, because you just said 5 years, right, which in the grand scheme
Yep.
probably doesn't sound like a huge amount of time. When were you like, I want to make cool stuff? And where did the idea, that was it just a natural idea to have the skateboards involved with it, or like
Yeah.
how did that all develop?
Yeah, so it totally was. The skateboards was like the thing from the start for sure. I want to say that I had the idea for years that I wanted to do this kind of stuff. Like, folks were making like small things like skateboard rings and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I wanted to get into doing some of that stuff. And I actually bought a bandsaw and sander and maybe a drill press. And I had all that stuff with thoughts of like wanting to get at that kind of thing, but like no real skill. And so, I had the tools and I started trying, and it kind of faded away. But then there was this like Ottawa City Wood Shop, which is the community shop I still work at now.
Mm-hmm.
They opened their doors, and on a whim, I took a class, and then I really liked it. And then there were just people that were there that were like sort of mentor figures, and they like kind of took me under their wings and kind of taught me everything I needed to know, really, or at least, kind of really showed me the how to approach certain tools and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then from there, basically able to progress to where I'm at now.
So where are you picking? Where does a project come to you? Where you're like, you know what? I think like I want to do this cool chair, or I
Right.
want to make a baseball bat, or I want to do these climbing holds. Like where's your inspiration from the projects? Where are you getting that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I want to say a lot of that's from like even like my Instagram, like seeing stuff over the years and just like saving things.
Mm-hmm.
Like my saved folder is like everything, right? It's got kind of all these concepts and little things that I see other folks that have maybe done, and I'm just like, well, I could apply that to my medium and it'll look super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Slash, just have, and then slash is just like lifestyle stuff, right? The climbing holds is because I like climbing like a lot, and I have friends that own climbing gyms, and so kind of thinking on processes of just like what are my influences on the day to day,
Mm-hmm.
and then leveraging some of those and trying to push those individual crafts further as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of really the crux of where everything comes from, I want to say.
You mentioned a great thing there, that it's funny that I'm only just using it now, but it's kind of the wonder of Instagram. The save function that you just described,
Yeah.
finally something that I'll use it like for the photography I do. Like if I see colors I like, I'll like say
Yeah.
I have like the folder that's just like, I'll bring that up as reference and I'll try and mimic that person's colors. If it's like, I don't know, just like you described, if it's something
Yeah.
cool. And I think that's great advice for anybody listening, like to get more than just sort of a passive experience from Instagram. If you're drawing, if like, and inevitably what's in somebody's feed is usually going to relate, right? Because you like that
Totally.
kind of thing. So that's what's coming through, to make the effort to make use of that save function they have. And you can create your
Yeah.
subfolders. And do you have any subfolders within that? Have you created like things to
Not
do, or
even.
not even?
No, not even.
Okay.
I just have a big old mash of stuff,
Okay.
and I mean, it's to me, it's somewhat all the same, actually. Like
Okay.
I like just like it's like my happy place almost to a certain degree.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. Is there anybody particularly, or that you'd be like, now this guy or this girl, this woman's making awesome stuff. I love this.
Not even really.
Okay.
There certainly are a few that I like, I like their stuff, but like it's not like overwhelmingly in my saved folder, let's say, it's not
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmingly one person or another
Okay. Okay.
necessarily. Yeah, it's just a mashup of stuff, frankly.
Right on. That's cool. I think, in all truth, like I don't know why I'm one of these people. Like I like lists, and so if I can
Yeah.
further delineate something, I will, maybe even unnecessarily. But
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool, just to make use of that. And like I say, it's only something I was like, what's this button? Oh, I can save things here. What, it's
Yeah.
it's awesome. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about. I saw you building the A frame. Is that where? So like, where did you build it? Like, did you like buy your own
Yeah.
plot of land and now you have an A frame
It,
there? And like, okay, and
yeah.
are you living there, or is that just like an extra space? And was it? I don't think I ever watched to see if it was actually like hooked up for electricity. So is it like just what is
No,
the whole?
no.
Tell me the story of the A-frame because it was pretty cool when I was watching the
Yeah.
construction.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, the A-frame really is just like an extension of my building and wanting to build like bigger, better things and just like
Mm,
learning really. Like all of it kind of stems from learning, right?
mm-hmm.
And so I had a friend that lived on a lake.
Mm,
He was just like, there's an old timer on the lake, nice guy. He's still my neighbor, so he's a nice guy. And he's just like, he's looking to sell a plot of his land, and he's selling it at a pretty good deal. You should probably go do it, you know? And so, yeah, I went and checked it out, met the guy. He was selling the acre for $5,000.
wow.
So I went and bought it, and then in this by the end of the year, I was just like, well, I might as well start building. And I want to build. Why not? Let's build a small A-frame that's like smaller than permit size, so it's 10 by 10. It's only 100 square feet.
Oh, cool.
No electricity. Yeah, no electricity, off grid, wood stove, and that's pretty much it, right? Like at that point, I think I'd been at this wood shop for maybe 2-3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 years, probably better part of 2-3 years. I just finished a canoe build project,
Mm-hmm.
so I was feeling really good off of that. That was sort of like, wow, can I build something like 16 foot, and
Mm-hmm.
be happy with it, right? And that worked out. It took like 400 hours to build a canoe, and then I was just like, well, the next thing would really be to build shelter then, right? And so
Yeah.
so I took that step, and of course, like you'll see Richards in a lot of the shots. Richards, I want to say, the foremost like major mentor that I've had at the Ottawa City Woodshop, and he was
Mm-hmm.
just like, and it's the same deal, right? It was just like, hey, do you think this is a crazy idea to build a structure? And he was like, no, I don't think so. We can do that. And I was just that's like my lame impression of him, but like it's that can do, like no quit, like
Mm.
nothing's impossible attitude. And I was just like, okay, let's give this a shot. I have some money in the bank. I can throw at this, not much, but enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, for about 10,000 Canadian dollars, we went and just like, yeah, over the course of 30 days, we more or less had the major structure together. And I took like a month off from work. So yeah.
Very cool. And where were the resources from to build it? Where were you
Yeah.
getting the wood and like the
Yep.
materials?
Yeah, so there was a great store close by called Irwin's. They actually delivered everything. They're
Okay.
they're within like 20 minutes of the place. Unfortunately, the guy retired and they're closed now, so
Okay.
they're no longer. I don't think they're any longer a business. There was a big article, and the guy, was instrumental in builds throughout the community for many years.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, decided to retire, and the business is closed. So yeah, but they were instrumental in basically providing everything.
That's cool. That's really
Yeah.
cool. And you said it took you, was it 30 days? Was that right? Did I hear that correctly?
Yep. Yep. The better part of 30 days to basically have the major structure together. And then I've been kind of tinkering with it for the better part of like the last year or two that it's been built.
Cool. Do you envision, like you said, there was a trajectory. It was like canoe. Okay, cool. But now
Yep.
naturally I would build an A-frame house. Did you
Yeah.
maybe you already did it, but that I didn't see. Did you have projects that you have lined up or then completed following the A-frame that sort of were linked to it?
Not really. That's sort of standalone just because it's so big.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I made climbing holds for like for the A-frame itself, and
Oh,
now
okay.
so small things like that, and then I tried out ideas like Murphy beds in the place and stuff like that. But moving forward, actually, it's other projects, frankly. So I
Okay.
bought like an Airstream, and I put that on the property for
Okay.
now, and then like eventually there'll be sort of like a reno of that thing.
Okay.
And then I also just I finally purchased like my first home.
Okay.
So
Congrats. That's cool.
thanks. Yeah, yeah. So that I move in this month actually. I move in April 1st, so that's going to be huge for me.
Yeah.
And the plan there is, I actually want to open up my own workshop. So I
Okay.
want to be. So the plan is maybe when lumber goes down, because everything's a bit COVID crazy right now.
Mm-hmm.
I want to build out a bit of a workshop,
Okay.
a decent, nice, spacious workshop in which I can host classes for like 4 people or something like that.
Cool. That was another. Again, many questions. The classes was definitely one of them. I did want to jump quickly to. Obviously, you got this cool thing you're doing where you've got the skateboards, and the skateboards are comprising like design elements, basically like a lot of colorful arrangements that end up entering into it, whether it's a chair or the
Right.
bat that I saw. Where are you getting those skateboards? Where are those
Right.
from?
That is the number one question
Yeah.
everyone always asks. That
Yeah.
they come from the skate shops. So when inevitably when a board loses its pop, or when folks snap them or break them,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to need to switch them out. So a lot of folks will bring them to the skate shops to have switched out, knowing that I'm out here, especially in my city here in Ottawa. Most folks know that if you just drop it off at the skate shop, I'll eventually pick it up.
Okay.
So they're pretty good about that. And furthermore, like, the skate shops, especially like my friends own this shop called Burling.
Mm-hmm.
Their major thing is they make, hundreds of boards a year themselves,
Mm-hmm.
like their shop decks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And going into that particular process, we'll actually talk about the design process and pick out the colors that go into the boards before manufacturing. So it's
Okay.
kind of like, it's super interesting because we get to really pick out some of what my work is going to look like before in the process of making the board. So like the life of a skateboard before it becomes any of my art is frankly picked out, and we kind of have this whole cradle to cradle concept figured out for all of my projects.
That's so cool. Like the whole, I don't know, and also that kind of imbued into your projects that you're making are like the stories of whoever wrote that. I think is this other cool
Yeah.
thing, and it'll often be that you'll have multiple boards going into it, so you're just sitting on so much more. You're swinging with so much more. There's just it's weird the kind of blending of stories that you've managed to put into the different things that you're making there. That like this cappuccino maker, was it an espresso machine, or what was the coffee machine that you made recently with it?
It's an espresso machine or
Right.
espresso maker.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could be like this had the person learned to like on this board, it's like, the layers of a
Oh
tree,
yeah. Oh, a
like,
thousand percent. Yeah, a
yeah.
thousand percent. Yeah, and I mean, when I make things for folks, I try and tell them what's what too, right?
Mm.
Where possible,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly in almost every piece, just because it's sort of my main supply, is going to be one of the Burling boards, some of the top of the world boards. So local boards that go into most of my projects. I want to say that pretty much every piece I put out has a local board in it. So at least there's certainly a piece of Ottawa in everything I make, I want to say.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I was wondering. I saw one of the things that I saw was the work that you were doing with paddles. Where are you doing, and what's kind of like the nature of the courses that you're doing with people? Are those sort of like when you feel like doing them? Are they or like semi regular, or is it just like what I think would be a cool thing to get people interested in? And how are you connecting with those people that want to be involved with those projects?
Right. So, I mean, I wanted paddles are sort of my mainstay.
Mm.
They're just like this, it doesn't really get more Canadian than a paddle or a hockey stick.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I mean, I've been able to have my own little twist on a paddle, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not super crazy to make necessarily. But obviously they're fairly particular to my style and stuff with
Mm-hmm.
the skateboards, and with the colors and everything and the stories behind them, I'm trying to, I made those to try and compete with some of like the other painted paddle companies. Like there's like a company called Norquay Co. here out of Toronto. They're fantastic. There's a company called Sanborn I think they're out of Michigan. They're out of the States, upstate somewhere, upper states. And they do very beautiful laminated and painted paddles. And
Mm.
so I was kind of just trying to make a product that would kind of enter that space of like a gourmet paddle, if you will.
Like that.
So
Cool.
yeah, yeah. So they're all like, $300 to $400 is kind of like,
Okay.
what we all price our paddles at. And so that's sort of my take on it. And then so I make maybe like 50 to 60 of those a year. And then my other main thing is like, I want to share an experience. So
Mm.
certainly before COVID, I was trying to make this more of a regular course.
Mm-hmm.
And of course COVID hit, and the idea of any sort of classes planned. I kind of just canceled and didn't want to take any risks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So once things go back to normal, quote unquote, knock on wood, I plan on running those courses hopefully semi-regularly, like probably monthly or bi-monthly or something like that. Especially when I have my workshop built, I'd probably want to build, I have to pay for it somehow. So yeah.
Right. Right. So are you now, it has the impression, but I would never assume, are you supporting yourself through your woodwork that you do now? Is that like your
No,
no. Okay.
no, I wouldn't. No. I mean, it's certainly a nice chunk of change after the fact, and it
Mm-hmm.
it, it certainly leverages the ability to do other projects outside of things, and kind of provides me with the baseline resources to do things.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but like my full-time job is with the Coast Guard.
Oh.
I'm multimedia. One of the multimedia folks over there. So similar to you, in
Oh,
which
okay.
you kind of leverage YouTube to learn all things vlogging, video, everything like that. I mean, I'm not trained in that whatsoever. I'm an engineer by trade.
Okay.
I have 2 degrees. Like my bachelor's and master's is all in engineering.
Okay.
Uh, to do
Cool.
with oil spills, and my undergrad's in chemical, and my master's is in environmental engineering.
Okay.
Uh, but I kind of just got bored with all that stuff. I don't mind jumping back into it, frankly. I think it's that stuff's pretty key, certainly with like changing climates and stuff. I wouldn't mind jumping back into the engineering world if the right project comes along. But I don't know, multimedia stuff really took hold. It's super fun when you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of brought in on different ships. You're kind of given a helicopter mission or something like that, and you're just like, okay, like you have the helicopter for the day. What are we doing? Kind of a deal. The pilot's kind of looking at you, and they're like, what? Okay. We're all trained we're all trained with advanced pilot's licenses for drones and stuff. So we kind of follow vessels along with drones and stuff, and can kind of shoot all that kind of stuff. So it's a super fun job actually, and
Sounds like it.
yeah, you're just kind of you just get kind of dropped off with a vessel, and you're embedded, and they're like, just make a story, like figure out the story of the vessel and come back with a piece. We're kind of like mini journalists and stuff, right? Just kind of get dropped off and shoot pieces, and
Man, that
and
sounds
then and
awesome.
yeah,
That
it's
sounds like
pretty
such
great.
a sweet gig.
Yeah, it's not bad. And then sometimes it's like really, really, really serious stuff that you get put into, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
like I've been on a couple oil spills, and
Mm.
no one's happy. People are pissed.
Yeah.
They look at you and you're like, who the hell are you? What are you doing on our land?
Yeah.
Kind of style sometimes, and you kind of have to. It's much more than just pointing a camera and shooting. It's you gotta be diplomatic, and really know why you're there, be respectful and stuff.
Mm.
uh, and so there's tense moments like that. I've also been brought in on some of we have a really amazing Indigenous training program in which we train search and rescue for various First Nations,
Mm-hmm.
that are coastal First Nations, so that in the event that a search and rescue or a major scenario goes down, generally speaking, folks in the community are going to be able to be on scene first and foremost before like
Mm-hmm.
we can get there with our Coast Guard vessels. Sometimes it just takes up to a few hours for us to get there. Things it's not as simple as 911 and a cop car shows up or anything like that.
Right.
So it takes us a bit sometimes, and knowing that sometimes those communities, you can get out to your brother a little quicker than we can. So we've been doing we've trained over 100 folks now, in which various folks have search and rescue training, and they can go after and get some of their own brothers, sisters, cousins, etc., and kind of save their own people before we get a chance to get there. And so that's been really interesting, because I mean, in Canada and in a lot of countries, relations with Indigenous communities and First Nations hasn't been the best.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of I want to say like reconciliation type stuff, but a lot of it, I want to kind of push away from that and say it's more community building, and knowing who our neighbors are, knowing who our brothers and sisters and friends are, frankly. And it's a lot of work where I get embedded in that kind of training. I've been on
Mm-hmm.
like three of those training sessions, and I want to say I've made some really good friends, and people in various communities across Canada that
Mm.
that are just like incredible. So I mean, work, yeah, there's good and bad, but that's what pays the bills, frankly. And beyond that, I'm able to basically take off from there and use some of those resources. But everything else I kind of make with my woodworking is kind of put back into my projects and back into having fun, frankly.
That's oh wow. Okay, that's quite a fascinating skill set that you have there. I mean, so I'm curious how, if you come from the engineering background, how did it end up with the Coast Guard thing? And not only just Coast Guard, when you first said that, I was like, oh, he's like doing like search and rescue or something, but then the digital creative element of it, like how did that happen?
Well, I want to say that like a lot of that has to do with skateboarding still, right?
Okay. Okay.
Skateboarding is so like I don't want to say everything's tied to it, frankly. And I wouldn't be lying if I said that, right? Because skateboarding is so much visual too, right? Like it's photos and videos, right?
Yeah.
Like the big thing, especially when I was like, had a couple sponsors and things, was to have photos and videos in magazine or photos and magazines and then video parts come out.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get your name out there. That's how sponsors see you, and you get products based on how much you get products and checks uh based on how much content of you that's out there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like photo in a magazine is like $100 or something like that. So knowing that, I kind of jumped and kind of getting injured a little more in skateboarding, I was like, okay, let me jump into shooting a little more.
Ah, okay.
And that's what I've kind of done. And then, it's since transpired and everything else, I want to say.
Okay, that's cool. So, uh, I'm curious. Like, well, obviously, you enjoyed it enough to improve your skill set to be able to get the job that you have now. But where is that? Like the filming and the sort of like cool video creation in your range, because it seems you have a multitude of interests. Like,
Hmm.
how into you are that?
Fairly into it. I mean, fairly into it in that, like, I feel like I'm mostly filming like a
Okay.
majority of the shit that I'm up to.
Okay. Okay.
um, I mean, I feel like we wouldn't be having this conversation even if I didn't, right? Because it's one of those things where I think, frankly, it's like me creating the content and putting it out there on a semi-regular basis is
Mm-hmm.
what kind of catches folks' attention at least, and puts my name into the ether at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a part of almost everything that I do, in that I think I want to say that I'm trying to do interesting stuff all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and just having the cameras roll and catching that like, a majority of the time, and then being able to splice it up into something interesting that can keep people's attention and stuff. That's sort of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind
Mm-hmm.
of keeps my name in the sphere, and not only is it just like keeping my name in the sphere or anything, I want to say that the main purpose that I'm filming everything is that I like looking back on the projects in
Yeah.
5-10 years down the road. And the main thing is being able to provide context. You have this
Mm-hmm.
paddle in your hands. You can link back to like 5, 6, 7 different videos of me having made these paddles,
Mm-hmm.
and you really know where it's come from and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it's a major part of everything that I do, and something that I certainly just do for myself or for others, certainly.
Yeah, it's this cool thing, isn't it? Where it seems to be obviously first and foremost, you've got the woodwork that you've done, and you create these things. But then the other layer to that is that the videos that you're producing are it's this like because of the freedom of education now, people are free. Yeah, like they'll entertain a number of interests that they have. That you're you are the subject of the documentary and you are making the documentary. That's like because
Yeah.
you have the interest of like the woodwork that you do, which is this. It's this cool like whole cycle to be involved in. Obviously, other people show up. I'm sure you
Yeah.
collaborate with people along the way, but it's just awesome how much agency people have to
Yeah.
like. I think there's a big complaint nowadays that people it's harder to make it in whatever thing that people are interested in
Yeah.
because there's so much what would you call it, dilution, or what's the other way, saturation. Like every market's
In the market.
saturated,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
for sure.
at the same time I feel like that's an equal step with people have never had such an ability to give themselves a
Exactly.
speaker,
Yeah.
like I
Well,
mean.
I want to say that you're a perfect example of this. Are you not? Like, I mean, you've made so much for yourself too. I want to say that, especially with the new job and stuff coming up, like, you've made that all yourself. I want to say, right? And in a lot of stuff that you filmed and documented and stuff, and showing, and all your hard work, frankly, right? So I mean, kudos to you too, right?
Oh, cheers! I appreciate it. It's just such an exciting time. I try to like
Yeah.
remind people of that because I think like I've had this discussion before. It's usually always more in vogue to be critical because people who are seen as optimistic often appear naive, like, oh, you don't know how difficult life is, and once you get more experience then you'll come out of the clouds. But I'm like, well, being grounded is useful. If that becomes so polarized that you never attempt anything, then you're
What's the
basic.
point?
Yeah, you've painted yourself into a corner, right? Like it's far, but that like whatever phrase you want to put at it. Rather shoot for the stars and like land on the moon than
Right.
go for nothing and remain here in the mud, right? Like
Yeah.
it just seems
Yeah.
self evident to me. But it's so encouraging. I mean, that's when I saw your work. I was like, also how this is a cool thing. I think the way they've integrated the skateboards into it, but how nothing needs not that there's always a traditional element. Like I'm sure what you're learning, like how to use the different tools.
Mhm.
There are ways that you build this chair, but the ability that people have now to like put their own spin on it and
Yeah.
the freedom of shared creation to give us more ideas, like you're saying you're saving
Yeah.
things. It's really really exciting. Is there any recent project, because I know you did or maybe you're like regrouping now after you did the holds for the climbing gym, but is there anything on the horizon where you're like, this is a cool thing I saw, maybe I'm gonna do this next?
Yeah, I mean, the house is going to be a big one, actually.
Okay.
Just kind of looking at stuff that folks have done, that's kind of out there in the landscape. I mean, it is saturated in a sense that a lot of ideas have been done on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
in terms of carpentry, woodworking, and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, making the story more about like me and sort of more of just like vlog styles, maybe day to day type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I want to delve into is even just like finances with regards to this new house purchase and stuff like that. I kind of want to jump into that and talk about how I'm able to make that possible. People maybe think I'm like getting paid a ton from my parents or something like that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I got a little bit lucky with the sale of my condo,
Mm-hmm.
and I have been working for the government for 10 years. There's a lot of money that I've put into my mortgage over that time and saved.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of go into like a bit of that kind of stuff. But then like I want to build out every single room, and I want to build every piece in every room from my own hands. So
Oh
I'm going to
wow.
kind of go down that route where, I'm building all my dining room table set and chairs
Wow.
I got like a tufting gun to make rugs and stuff. I want to make a rug for my
Okay.
my living room, and I've already made a couch before, so put that in there. But then like frames for things, and plants, maybe plant stands and stuff. So like I don't know. I kind of want to leave no like the next thing would be like my story of
Right.
my house, but no stone unturned sort of styles.
Okay.
So, that's
Yeah.
kind of coming up on the horizon. Yeah.
So when you say you want to build out the room, so you mean the like the furniture, right? You're thinking
Yeah.
like what are is there any, like you said rug, you said furniture.
Yeah.
I guess then anything that you could imagine, be it tables
Yeah.
or chairs or anything like that.
Totally.
That's cool. Do you want
Renos and stuff too.
to? Sorry, which what else?
Renovations and stuff too, if need be.
Okay.
The thing is, it's a 4-year-old house, so it's actually like pretty brand spanking new. And my buddy
Yeah.
built it. He built it really well too. So I'm just like, there really isn't much renovating, which is kind of good.
Okay.
But I kind of wanted to fix her upper at the same time. So we'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is. Do you want to, with the stuff that you're doing in there? I know, like obviously, I'm talking about the skateboard angle. That's informing a lot of the stuff that you make. But I
Yeah.
also saw just like you did kind of. It seemed to not be skateboard related, just like interesting patterning. Like it was like a 3D optical illusion board that you had
Right.
created. When you're
Yeah.
doing this stuff in the house, I'd imagine, I'll just throw out a guess, that it won't always be the skateboard thing. Do you have like some of the designs where you're like, oh, I want to try this design, or like include some new element again, like you had with the
Um,
skateboards?
Yeah, so I mean, a big thing too is I want to get into furniture making a little more and
Mm,
kind of be known to make some decent furniture and maybe sell some more of that stuff. So
cool.
frankly, that's the route I'm going down. And but I'm not straying away necessarily from skateboards at
Okay.
all, right? So I want to say that it's still very much the core of anything that I make in my story, right? So
Hmm.
so it's still going to be a part of what I do, and it's more than anything, it's a practice to push the craft of
Okay.
furniture making and that sort of style thing. And a lot of like a lot of my builds have sort of like that mid-century flair, or sort of that mid-century throwback vibe.
Mm, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I want to delve into some of the history of the pieces that I'm making too.
Mm,
A lot of it might be sort of more reproduction styles. And so, for as an example, there was this company in Ontario, Waterloo, Canada, called Dalecraft, and
mm,
they made this super cool chair, that's sort of like a Hans Wegner replica, sort of like their CH33. It's the style of chair that was done, but their own sort of take on it. That
mm.
company is folded.
Okay.
I can't really seem to find any information on it. So my plan was actually to try and buy an old one. There seems to be old ones that pop up here and there. So I've been keeping my eye like a hawk on eBay and Kijiji. And my plan is to buy one and then like remake them sort of from scratch, right? And then maybe flip them, maybe make more in the future if it makes sense, and
Okay.
kind of have this whole Canadian heritage story, but remade in 2021, 2022, right? And just kind
Cool.
of put my spin on it. Yeah, I want to like there's this cool curved backrest. And the plan is to like, layer a laminate of skateboards on the front. That's kind of like the sunbursting skateboards thing. That's like really cool, on the front and on the backside. And then the rest of it would be like a regular wood, like ash, or probably like an ash or something like that. So that's sort of, like the plan is to pull up history, build them without being too cheesy or like straight up copying anything too much.
Hmm.
It's really like, finding niche products that I can really rebuild out, and then do it tastefully is the idea.
That's so cool. I love this element of kind of borrowing from the past.
Mm,
But like also like you said, this kind of like, but it's not just to do the past, because obviously you're putting like this totally new thing on it. But I think
yeah,
I love this too. Like I don't know, you just, there's so much of the world that unless you question the world, you you
mm,
don't know that it exists. It's like the more that you're gonna build out your skill set here, the more you're
yeah,
just gonna discover all these things that unless you go looking, you don't even know we're even there. It's like the world like
yeah,
gets occupied by like more and more interesting stuff as you continue to
yeah,
get your skill set, which is just, again, I hope that's kind of like inspiration for people, how, or just to be aware of that classic like how much we don't know is really
yeah,
shaping your view of reality. And just
yeah,
like the actual, what you're inherently discovering is just, wow, there's like, it's a classic thing where you read a book and you find out, maybe let's just use the example of woodworking, where it's a guy who you discover is like, he owned this particular decade, and
yeah,
and it's just known, but you're like, but I didn't know. It's just funny
yeah.
to find out like all the time these kind of like
Oh, for sure.
monolithic people who like, oh, but I never heard this before, but then
Yeah,
now you can't imagine your world without having known that that person occupies it, and so informs what you're doing.
yeah. And I mean, I want to say that's so fun because it kind of goes back to the point of, when you almost first asked me, you describe yourself as a carpenter, right?
Hmm.
In a traditional sense, I've never gone to school for it. I have never really taken a course on it,
Hmm.
even, or anything like that. Yet all our supervisors at the shop are carpenters. I would say they're formally trained, right?
Hmm.
Through a college program, mostly here in town. And I want to say that, having a more naive sort of eye kind of going into things, like, we were kind of discussing earlier, an optimistic, naive eye going into things. There is a lot of pessimism in that, like, oh, you can't do it that way, or, like, we didn't learn it that way in school. And I'm just like, why not though? And whether fail or success, you learn something through trying. And yeah, kind of coming into things naive is kind of awesome sometimes, because yeah, you totally see stuff that others don't. And then not only that, you just don't have any background to know that failure isn't an option, or that failure is an option in certain things. So you just kind of go for it. And even if it does fail, you're going to learn something for the next time. So there's sort of that naivete that's kind of awesome to a certain degree.
It's a fantastic point. It's a great point. And this is something I found recurringly now has come up again and again and again, that the value of, like you described it, being naive. You could call it like a beginner's mind,
Yeah.
and kind of the curse of knowledge to assume, because you've done things, that there is only then this one way to do it. And it's with everything. It's like, I had this fantastic book recommended recently, it's called Creativity Inc. And the guy who basically founded Pixar, and like his experience of, he wanted to create the first animated computer generated movie, and how that was impossible, and there was no way that you could possibly do that, and like, we've seen what computers are capable of. And obviously, Toy Story was, you may have heard of it, pretty successful.
Yeah.
He did okay.
Yeah.
And it's so important for everything. It's like, what you're describing there, also again returning to this idea of the way that education is changing, that it really, and I think for the better, that where so often universities are just like old boys clubs, and what people are coming out of there, I mean, not increasingly, I don't want to also be just negative, because there's a lot of awesome stuff at universities, and there's great things that come from it, but a lot of the time too, it ends up being an old boys club that is gatekeeping unnecessarily, where now, if you want to work with wood, just teach yourself how to work with wood. If you want to make music, just teach yourself how to do that. And then with the myriad of platforms, try and get your stuff out there and kind of like start to make headway. Now, I wouldn't use the word naive again. It's like, all of this usually needs to be leveraged. Like, I mean, that's why I've had a day job for 8 years, but who cares? That's probably what you're going to have to do to leverage doing all the time exactly what you want to do. But
Absolutely,
it's worth it. No, it's so useful. It's this idea of like, I don't know what's impossible, so I'll do so much more, is it's a great mindset. I think we'd all benefit from it.
Yeah. And I want to, kind of alluding back to a point that you made before about being optimistic versus, having done something for a while. Yeah, I want to say you and I are both kind of optimistic, but it's also what you also don't maybe see at the surface is that we're probably outworking most folks. Like, I want to say that, most days I am working from 7 to 9. I want to say 7 in the morning till 9 at night, on things. Not kind of at the expense of some social stuff sometimes, but I mean, it's also COVID, so there's not really any social anything at the moment. But I'm certainly never not working my face off to a certain degree. And so I'm optimistic, but it's also not just blind optimism. It's certainly trying and working away at everything always.
No, again, that's another fantastic point. It was a recommended video, but I'm like, I see why this video was recommended. And this guy was basically talking about, I think he's like a cartoonist video producer, and he was talking about how he takes issue with that phrase, like, quit your job and follow your passion, because it doesn't qualify that if you just did that, then you would have no money and you're homeless, and now where has that even gotten you, right? What people are better served by, like you just said, that if you want to do something like this, you should recognize that you will have to put in the time. You'll probably love it, because you're doing the thing that you enjoy doing, but it'll have an element of sacrifice to it. There's
Yeah.
like even the things that we love, they're taking away from something else, and that adds to the story.
Yeah.
That deepens the appreciation of it, but it won't be magical, or it won't just magically work. And you have to go with this mindset of like pure process, because there's absolutely no guarantee that it goes anywhere. It's just generally a
Yeah.
better way to live. But I mean,
Yeah.
you could easily do 2 decades of trying to build it, and you're still working a day job. But in
Yeah.
my opinion, you would still do it anyways, because at least you're doing something that like dials you in, makes you feel
1,000%.
alive.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, so it's some of what I'm hearing too is execution, like kind
Mm.
of constant execution. You only learn through executing to a certain degree, right? So yeah, just kind of putting stuff out there, and whether it sucks or it's awesome, like, you just, what's next,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, it's
Iterative
a great
process.
point. Very
Yeah.
good point. And also, like, I would enter into, and I'm sure, here's a question I'll just ask you is like, how are you? You obviously have your ideas, and then your
Mhm.
ideas become the things that you create. But I'm
Yeah.
certain you probably have a mindset, well, that I don't just want to make things, I want to get better at making things. Like, actually, practice will increase the skill, but then how are you teaching yourself more? How are you evolving the skill set? How do you go about that?
Yeah, well, I think it's evolving the skill sets involves trying different things, right?
Okay.
And not just doing the same old thing. Like if I could be making paddles till the cows come home,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'd probably, wouldn't be rich, but I'd be, financially better off or something like that, right?
Sure.
Sometimes folks are just like, why don't you just like make 1 million of this and sell them all for at what you do? And it's just like, that's just not, that's not enriching to the fullest extent, like certainly it's enriching to have a batch of them come out, and it makes things more special when you kind of do them by batches and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's, you evolve. I want to say that, like, one thing that I do is I have a life goals like list,
Oh,
right?
cool. Okay.
And I want to say I look at it pretty much weekly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that really is the evolution of thoughts and the evolution of where I want to be going. I really have a vision of
Mm-hmm.
where I want to be going, and that involves learning, frankly, right? And
Yeah.
so having things listed out, having new projects there listed out and defined, and then knowing that I need to execute against that,
Mm-hmm.
putting that sort of thought process into that, like, let's say once a week, certainly, more some weeks more than others,
Mm-hmm.
kind of makes me somewhat accountable to eventually enriching my ideas, enriching my thought process, and pushing my skill set.
That's cool. I'm curious, like, what is your? I mean, I've seen like it's great. Like, obviously, these are things to talk about at the end. We want people to check out your Instagram, check out your YouTube.
Sure, yeah.
What is the experience you have of the way that people are consuming your content on either of these? Is it purely in a sort of observational, like, wow, I love the kind of stuff is he doing, that he's doing, and I just enjoy seeing it? Do you have people who are looking at it and going, this has inspired me to do more woodworking? Is it a mix of them?
Sure.
Like, what's some of your
Yeah.
experience with the people who enjoy what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a very interesting question, because it can be overwhelming at times, right? There's a
Hmm.
lot of shit that kind of comes down. I don't know if I can swear on this and stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah, you can.
sorry,
Yes, yeah.
I
Yes.
should have asked
Go
before.
go
Sorry,
wild.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's about being social, right?
Hmm.
And for me, I think it's really about relationship building and
Yeah.
stuff, right? I've had folks now that have bought stuff from me years past, and they continue to support me and
Wow.
stuff, and buying new things. And to a certain degree, I'm getting to grow with them. They're buying stuff from me year after year, and I'm learning about their family, and now they're buying things for their kids from me and stuff, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of it's, it isn't just about internet likes and stuff like that or anything like that. I want to say, I think a lot of it is I'm genuinely curious about people. I build these relationships with folks through these platforms, and I'm hoping they can support me and I can support them however they can, right? A lot of emotional support, especially now during these times.
Yeah.
And so I look at it really as fostering relationships with people that I hope to know and care for, because they take the time to kind of look at my work
Hmm.
and be invested in some of my work. And so, if I'm inspiring others to build things, that's awesome. It's kind of like, kind of the skateboard culture back into things. It's just like, we're here to help each other. If you're trying to trick or if you're trying to learn something,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're being a dick, then it
Right.
might be a little more not into that, but certainly here to help.
Yeah.
But a ton of folks are starting to use skateboards. It's a great thing, right? It's more ideas and pushes me to push my craft, right? And
Yeah.
vice versa, I think. So a lot of I want to say that it's all in how you look at things, and I use the tool to leverage relationships and building for the better, building for the future and stuff for sure.
That's cool. So do you get the person who's like, I guess a lot of your videos you actually tell people. That's kind of you show them how you made it. So they wouldn't
Yeah,
even have to necessarily ask you, because you can say,
right.
much as I would tell you, I can refer you to this video if you want to know how to make this chair, because I made this chair. Uh,
Yeah,
but that's, it seems obvious that building relationships would be the way to go.
hmm,
But I think what is a really cool thing is that how you do that can be so dynamic depending on what your interest is, because you
sure.
could have, like, I think the easiest and most common you might think is like a collaboration. You got two channels, you'll have two people come together, uh,
Yeah,
but then purely just relationships, it takes it's almost like the
yeah,
unexpected elements that are cool. For example, like, I genuinely try to not have any barrier aside than my own safety that I consider in terms of what I create. So
yeah,
if somebody wants to talk to me, I'll just talk to them about whatever. But then
yeah,
I've had like several instances now, just because having a good relationship can kind of be the point, where
yeah,
I've then been put in contact with people where it almost seems bizarrely appropriate and perfect for like the other creative stuff that I'm doing, which was,
okay,
so cool. Obviously,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
Devin had introduced me to you, but
yeah,
I had no intention at first. Like, it was only that Devin and I like spoke to each other just generally, and
yeah,
it was cool to like just develop relationships, and
yeah,
that just seems to, put good things in your way. And it's not that I'm not interested in woodworking, but I wouldn't have known to go looking for that. As soon as I see it,
yeah,
I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like, but yeah, it's great if you go with that kind of mantra, that you'll probably find what you're looking for, and even better, it won't even be in a way that you could have ever expected. That it's got that like
yeah.
virtue of being kind of like totally. I don't know. I wouldn't
Oh,
conceptualize the woodworking skateboard guy. I wouldn't know to go looking.
yeah. But I mean, you know what? I think there's a mutual respect in the sense that, we're both like content creators and we work at making things for whether it's for YouTube, Instagram, anything like that, right?
Sure.
I, in the creative process, inherently, like the one thing I'm sure everyone can kind of relate to is that it can be a lonely experience, and it's a tough experience at times, right? You're just like, wow, I put out this video, great, it got like 2 views.
Yeah.
That sucks. So,
Breaks your heart.
at a bare minimum, right? You can have a bit of a support group for that kind of stuff, right? And I'm here to support folks. Now folks ask me about editing and stuff, right? Because maybe they see that I have a skill set in it, and
Hmm.
frankly, I give them detailed breakdowns of what I think they should do, and you know what? Also, it's just like, sometimes, your head's so far down a hole that's like, is this even relatable to the everyday person, right?
Hmm.
So to then have a core group of folks that you can send things to, just to be like, hey, can you just tell me if this makes any sense whatsoever?
Hmm.
That's, those types of relationships are huge too, right? And I think,
Hmm.
at a very basic level, um, I consider you a friend now. It's like, it's awesome, to be able to connect and kind of, discuss that, because yeah, the process of creating and kind of going down this path, you put so many hours into something, and you're who is this going to matter? Is anyone going to care? It's kind of good to at least have some emotional support at a very minimum, right?
Totally. It's like, it's a cool thing. The point you're making there, I feel you're making, it's this idea that there is, no matter how it may seem at like face value, very, very
Yep.
different, there's an incredible universalism to making
No.
things and learning things. And the point that it's also, like you said, it can be quite a lonely process. And
Yeah.
but on the flip side, like the converse of that, which is awesome, is that it's so inspiring when you find people who are like-minded. And it doesn't, like, again, it doesn't need to be, my things like Japan centric or whatever. It's just, I just love seeing people learning and loving what they're doing and having an
Sure, yeah.
interest that they're getting better, and that's inspiring people, and that that they're open to that line of conversation. Although I would say it's also sort of it's a bummer. It's like, it's annoying sometimes. I've
Yeah.
experienced where people feel like, I'm sure people do just collaborate for the analytics, for the numbers, but it really hurts when you feel like I'm not trying to leverage that when I reach out to people. And sometimes I feel
Yeah.
like it can be misconstrued as like trying to ride on someone's coattails, where it's not that. It's like, you get people are like, I only collaborate with people I know. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
but this is how I could get to know you. And it's
Yeah.
like, what could be a cooler way to get to know somebody than to build a cool piece of art or some project? It's like, this is like an
Yeah.
open invitation essentially, to be a friend with someone.
Yeah.
I don't want
And
to
I mean,
push too hard, but you know what I mean.
no, yeah, I do know what you mean. And I mean, you can sort of suss that stuff out, and you can kind of smell that stuff out from a mile away if someone's like, completely fake about something, or trying to do something for the sake of doing it and not
Yeah.
really, I want to say that that's something that you can just smell out and kind of nip hopefully earlier rather than let it take too much of your time and stuff, right?
Totally. And the thing too, which I try and remind myself at the end of the day as well, is that, like, allow people their lives, because sometimes that impression is just like, it's easy to take things too personally, where
Yeah.
somebody may just be like, look, it's my life right now, I don't have time to go and do this thing. And so,
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
it falls into like trying to think better of people, benefit
Yeah.
of the doubt and all that. But
Exactly. You don't know where people are at any given time, right?
yeah.
Yeah, like I had a really rough November and stuff. And so it's just like, I was kind of like, I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do that. It's just how it goes, right?
Right, right. But so awesome when it does. So awesome when it does. And then, like I said, I love this kind of unexpected stuff where, you get the person, let's just throw out random things, this sort of cool creative stuff that could come out of it, where you find somebody who is like an incredible musician. They end up doing like the music for a video. This guy is an animator. They contribute their skills as like, maybe they animate some portion of a video, and then the story is about a guy who's a botanist and he has a greenhouse, and you just get this
Yeah.
like weird like smashing together. But they all
Yeah.
just, everybody's just doing what they love and making something cool.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world of, like I was saying, the way that education evolves, the way that like collaboration. Like, here's another example I really love now, how where I was talking about, for example, you have kind of like an old boys club in like university, but how
Yeah.
mentorship has now switched to, not that it's not cool when you have somebody who's like older and had all this experience, but that it really is kind of a meritocracy, where if a 10-year
Yeah.
old has spent from 7 to 10 and they became an incredible cartoonist, that you'll
Yeah.
have a 30-year-old who suddenly decided at that point in their life that they want to learn, and now you have 10-year-olds mentoring 30-year-olds,
Of
and
course.
that's just
Yeah.
like,
Of course.
the world never saw that before. And that's just another,
Right.
I love how that's changed as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, merit's kind of everything, right? It kind of goes back to the whole skateboarding thing, right? Like
Hmm.
I mentioned at the very top, it's just like, it's based on, how many hours you've put in. It's not, it's sometimes it's kind of based on, have you put the work in, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
if they're at least showing that you're dedicated, then kind of goes a long way, right?
True, true. I'm curious with the skateboarding. Is it like, I've seen in some of your videos you're still doing it? Is it something that you
Yeah.
still get to do like consistently, that
Yeah, like
you're
every day.
every day? Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like my workout, right? It's like running anything, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not as a psycho of a level as I maybe used to. I'm not like jumping down 20 stairs or 10
Okay.
stairs or anything like that. My knees will break, but like certainly like low impact stuff,
Hmm.
uh, getting technical on like boxes and ramps and stuff like that. yeah, and even flat ground, a lot of just, yeah, learning new things still for sure, and just keeping it light and fun.
That's
Yeah.
cool. That's
Yeah,
really
and I
cool.
don't. Yeah, because I think, I don't know. It's the culture is very important still. I think, skateboarding itself, and
Hmm.
so, ensuring that you're still a practitioner in it, for me at least, is a big deal and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And I mean, anything that you can do like to sharpen your mind, because I feel like the it's almost in some ways it's like this cool. There's all things that you have to do are usually some mix of like intellect and physicality,
Yeah.
and tricks and the technicality. The like what I don't know what you. Yeah, I guess the tricks that you do in skateboarding are so technical. There,
Hmm.
it must work
Maybe.
your brain in a different way than say
Yeah.
running. Like.
Yeah. and and not only that, what I want to say is, the beautiful part about it, I've been really feeling this for the last 2 to 3 years, is that, I'll have a bit of a routine to a certain degree,
Mm-hmm.
and when and I want to say that it honestly puts me in a flow state. Like,
Mm.
I do this one lap that's, if I can do every single trick in that one, like, thing that I do every single day, it really just brightens my day and puts me in a bit of a flow state,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm just like, yeah, everything's working today. My foot-eye coordination's on point. Nothing can stop me now, to a certain degree. So, that's, the one thing before I'd go to the wood shop would be, I'd skate for like 2 hours, or an hour or two before going to the wood shop, and just kind of having my mindset right, and knowing that everything's working. I worked out, I don't know, something about that, but it's sort of like my yoga, my meditation. It puts me in the right place
Yeah,
too.
I could totally see that. This kind of, and I mean, it's like anybody who's practiced anything will tell you it's like a warm up period.
Yeah.
Like, and if you're doing that like you described, then no wonder coming out the end of it that your brain's woken up, it's activated, everything to do with, like I say, the physicality of, well, like now that you're balanced, that your brain has had to go through. I mean, all of these things too. If you screw them up, they're pretty important that you don't, because you'll just
Yeah.
bail real hard, right? So like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you're real dialed in after that. Just like if you practice guitar for 10 minutes, your hands loosen up. Just like if you write, your ideas come out better. No,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. Um,
Yeah.
do you have a core group of people that you still do that with? Do you have your like
Yep.
crew? Oh, okay.
Pretty much the same people I grew up skating with. They actually, like, my best friend Tom, they own and run that skate shop that I was telling
Okay.
you about, that makes the skateboards that I generally use.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll skate certainly a couple times a week. And then there's a skate park. Well, the skate park's actually named after one of our good friends that passed,
I
but
see.
he was one of the guys that was a part of our crew. We were all sponsored by the same shop growing up. Well,
Cool.
I say growing up, but this is like post university,
Okay.
here in Ottawa. Like, that's when I first started skating really hard here in town, and then, like, made those friends, had a couple sponsors, and we are all kind of sponsored by the same shop. They've since gone on to make their own shop, and one of our friends did pass, unfortunately, but the skate park's named after him, so we still feel like he's very much so a part of our minds and hearts all the time. So yeah, it's our crew, and all the kids that have kind of come into the fold that are now getting sponsored.
Hmm.
It's just like the next generation, right? But we're still all there, and we're still all having a blast for sure.
And that's awesome to hear that that still remains a part of your routine. And I mean that you've managed to, yeah, you've managed to intertwine it with like everything that you do in some sense. Isn't it cool that like you kind of have your day? This is a great scenario, I think, for people, is when you can have, if even if you're not doing 100% full time what it is, that say whatever your passion is, but like that if you could have at least it informing it, where
Yeah,
there's no doubt that you being a better drone pilot, that you having to do editing, of course, that like works in this
yeah,
triangle. That when you have
100%.
those
Yep.
in alignment, it's really really cool. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I cannot believe how time has passed here, but
How it always goes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to I want to say thanks so much for having you on. Where were I mentioned? Is there anything else? So we'll list obviously your Instagram, your YouTube. Do you have a website that we should get in there?
I do. It's Maru, the Circle brand. Actually,
Okay,
it's like Japanese based Circle,
nice.
Circle, the Circle brand makes no sense, but here I
Okay,
was. I did it. I was kind of like, and I originally started as like camera straps and stuff. So it was sort of like
okay.
the Maru represented like the circle that
Mm-hmm.
was like the lens of a camera and stuff, right? So
Okay.
that's kind of like, yeah, so that's kind of where the genesis of all that kind of came from. And so you'll see that, like, I still sell all my paddles and everything under the guise of Maru. um
Okay. Cool.
yeah, and so that's kind of where it came from. And I mean, I used to come out to like Japan, like I've been out there like 3 times for skateboarding and stuff.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I had really good friends that lived in Tokyo and Kichijoji. I'd always kind of
I
go
love
out that way.
Kichijoji. That's a
Yeah,
great
cool,
neighborhood.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'd like be out there. I'd lived out there for like a week or two at a time, and of a little small, the small apartments that y'all have,
Oh, yeah.
So I'd just be out there, and then when he was at work, he was a teacher as well.
Mhm.
I would I would just like go spend my time in Harajuku or something like that, right? So,
Cool.
and then we'd skate all night and stuff. So that was kind of my Japanese story. And yeah, so no, that's primarily my Instagram and YouTube would mostly be it. And yeah, see me at the
Okay.
skate park if you're ever in town.
Right on. Cool. Well, again, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for tuning in and listening. Don't forget to rate and all that good stuff for if you're on Spotify or Apple iTunes. And catch you guys in the next podcast. Thanks again, Andrew, for coming on.
Really appreciate the chat. Thank you.
Cheers.